This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers, adult language, and mature themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Podcast of Rare Antiquities, episode 32. Today, we'll be discussing that film with Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis. No, not that one. No, not that one either. We're going back to the year 2000 and the film Unbreakable, directed by M Night Shyamalan. I am your host, Geoff.
And I am your breakable co-host, Harry.
You are a very breakable man, both in body and spirit.
I break other people's spirits. Let's go.
That is true. You're the breaker, not unbreakable.
Yes. The unbankable, but the breakable.
the unbankable. That's good.
They should make that. The Expendables now, they should not be the Expendables because they're just too old. They're on the Unbankables.
Yeah, just the Unbankables. Just a bunch of old fucking fat dudes sitting around. There's like a gun in the corner, but that's pretty much it.
I told you, it's that poker story. Arnie, Sly, Bruce Willis, make it happen. The Unbankables.
I'd watch it. Watch it. Then we could discuss it on the show. That'd be great.
I want to film it on the show.
I'm sure we could get at least two of those three guys on the show. No doubt about it. Yeah, not Bruce Willis, though. He just wants too much money. So, welcome back to the show, man. It's good to be recording again for sure.
Yes, a nice little break, but good to be back.
We're going to do Unbreakable today from the year 2000. Let's reminisce a little bit and go back to the year 2000. What do you remember from that time when this movie was ready for release?
Well, I was still partying like it was 1999. Not much else. No.
Yeah, out drunk. I don't remember.
Blackout drunk.
Anything.
It was like Bender when he kept going to those parties and he kept getting fatter and fatter.
Yeah.
No, I remember seeing this movie again. We were working at the theater, I believe, still. I have a vague memory of seeing this in the theater. I doubt I would have missed it back then, especially because Bruce Willis didn't really think too much as a recognizable director of M. Night Shyamalan. I know he did Sixth Sense before this, and I think this is his next kind of more recognizable hit after that. So yeah, I remember seeing it, and then I remember enjoying it. I do believe I own this on home video, and I have not seen it except for maybe one time since I bought it on DVD way back when. And I'm not even sure if that's the case. So it was a good long while since I had seen this one.
Yeah, this was in fact his direct follow-up to The Sixth Sense. This is his next film here. I mean, I remember, back in the day, I was a pretty big fan of The Sixth Sense. Obviously it had a lot of hype around it. And I just remember the trailer for this movie. I really loved the trailer for Unbreakable. So I was pretty excited just based on that.
Did it still take you 6 weeks to download it like Phantom Menace?
Yeah, almost. Yeah. I really love the trailer. I just actually watched it on YouTube before the show here. It's a good teaser. It still kind of holds up. Some teasers from that time, the late 90s, early 2000s. Some of them don't quite hold up as modern trailers, but it's still a pretty good one. And I'm a big fan of movie trailers. I don't know about you, but...
Well, of course. One of the better parts of the movie.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it don't want to get too sidetracked. I remember fairly recently Adam Driver said, serendipitous that it's happening this week, is Star Wars Episode 8 trailer supposed to debut at Celebration in a couple of days from now. And Adam Driver a few weeks ago or last month or something said he wished that there were no movie trailers at all for the movie. And I'm kind of now, even though I love movie trailers, I kind of feel the same way. I wish that things were more like a very 20-30 second preview and that's it, because I find trailers still, even if they don't spoil a movie now, they just set up too much expectations for movies, and I think that's an unfortunate reality for people today. But I mean, they have to be there to get the butts in the seats and the money for the big wigs in the studios. So, but kind of wish the trailers it'd be a teaser, a 30-second teaser, and that'd be it.
Yeah, it's a marketing necessity, I guess. I see what you're saying. There are trailers out there that do spoil a lot, but even the ones that don't, sometimes they just show things that you would have rather seen for the first time in the film. Yeah.
Well, just like, going back to Phantom Menace, Darth Maul, double-bladed lightsaber. Imagine that was left for a surprise for the movie.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool. But that being said, there is something to, not, again, to get too off track, but fuck it, we're doing it. There is something to be said for the building of excitement. So when you see some of the hints of the stuff you're going to see, that's awesome. Like that feeling of seeing Darth Maul with the double-bladed lightsaber in that trailer and then living with that excitement for so many months. was also kind of special as well. So I guess the flip side of that is you kind of get to live in some of that excitement for a lot longer because of a well-made trailer. So I guess I'm kind of split.
You get the joy of that anticipation, which is longer than the movie experience.
Yeah.
But then the impact of the movie may not be as much for you after the fact for the rest of your life. So, I don't know.
I guess you can make the argument either way, but anyway.
That's what I wish. I just wish that maybe episode 8 or episode 9 would just say, okay, we're going to be experimental. No trailers. No nothing. Just go see it.
It's not like they really need to showcase the fact that Star Wars episode 8 is coming out. That could be the teaser. Star Wars, The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Give us your money, and that's it.
And you have Jar Jar as the cashier. They're the accountant.
yeah. He's just got his. He's not even saying anything. He just has his hand out. Right?
Morning.
Put the Benjamins here, mofos, right here.
Yes.
Anyway, so back to Unbreakable. So I was pretty excited about this. It looked from the teaser, you don't get a whole lot of information. I just like the feel of it. That's kind of my memories there. But let's look at some of the history here. So it did come out November 22nd, year 2000. Opened on 2,700 screens. Fairly wide release. This was made in a budget of $75 million, approximately. The domestic gross was approximately $95 million, which, well, it sounds like a modest profit. You take into account marketing and budget and all of that, then, it's not exactly a smash hit. And especially considering it followed The Sixth Sense from only a year prior. The Sixth Sense, for example, was made on a budget of $40 million, and it brought in a box office of $293 million. So, The Sixth Sense was a smash hit on a shoestring budget, and this just did not quite live up to the commercial success of the prior film. In my opinion, this is a better movie, but, so that's kind of the context around that. M Night Shyamalan's a fairly polarizing figure, I feel. Harry, what are your thoughts on this guy and, the trajectory of his career?
Well, the unfortunate reality is that he sometimes just feels like a one-trick pony, like he has a certain style, and his topics are of a certain substance and stuck in a certain genre with, the kind of like the mystery thriller with the twist ending. And that's kind of the bulk of his movies. I know he's done a few other things, but his latest one, Split, which I haven't seen and I do want to see because it seems to have gotten favorable reviews. I heard there's another twist ending in that's supposed to blow people's minds. So the problem with that is then that's all you expect. So you're on guard, and we've talked about this before, you're just looking for it, you're waiting for it, and then the surprise really isn't that much of a surprise at the end, because it's like, well, kind of knew something like this was going to happen.
Right.
So with The Unbreakable being his second foray into this type of filmmaking, I guess, we'll talk about it, the twist at the end is still fairly effective. But with respect to his whole body of work, I feel that he's just shoehorned himself into one type of genre with that twist ending, and it's just his movies have gotten less effective and less effective and less effective as time has gone on.
I'll agree with you on the twist ending, sort of in general, where I feel almost every movie now feels like it's got to have some kind of twist, whether it's right at the end or at some point early in the third act. You see it coming and they telegraph the whole thing so you know what's coming, and they don't do it with any skill. So, you see it a mile away. I mean, Unbreakable, I feel the twist isn't really much of a twist. It's just more something you didn't see coming. It didn't kind of go back on itself. And The Sixth Sense, definitely a twist ending and handled in a very sensible way, skillful way, so that it worked. But, as it progressed from there, he kind of got shoehorned into that a little bit. And the movies were just of kind of low quality. I mean, I think after Signs,
I do still enjoy Signs, which I think is his next one after this one. Yeah. After that, it's
all downhill, baby.
It's all downhill, yeah. And even Sign, I feel that the kind of the twist ending or revelation at the end about their destiny, characters' destinies and what they're supposed to do, it's not effective at all. But I enjoyed the rest of the movie.
I know, I agree. I like Signs, and I wish it was better. I want to like it more, but you're right. The destiny thing wasn't handled all that well, but there's so much good about it. Pardon the pun, it showed signs of his career kind of turning the wrong direction, because The Village was the follow-up there. And I actually like a lot about that film as well, but the twist there was just garbage. And then, The Happening was just terrible top to bottom. I don't know if it had a twist ending at all. I don't think it did, but it was just a shitty movie.
The twist was that Mark Wahlberg still got a role in Hollywood.
What a twist! Mark Wahlberg. Even after being a racist mofo, still gets lots of play. Anyway, that's the opening thoughts on that. We'll talk a little bit about perhaps some twist endings later and come back to Split as well if you're interested in spoilers. Okay, any other opening thoughts?
No, maybe, I don't know. How about the greedy, lazy one himself?
Who, Bruce?
Yeah, old Bruce.
Well, I figured we could talk a little bit about Bruce's performance as we kind of go through film. Definitely got lots to say about Mr. Bruce Willis. So let's come to that as we talk to the film. All right, Unbreakable. A young woman rests in the break room of a department store with her newborn. It's 1961, and I guess they haven't invented delivery rooms yet. The baby's crying, but not to worry. A nice doctor happens to be shopping on his lunch break and swings by to check things out. He asks the mother if the child has a name yet. It's Elijah. He wants to take a look, and everything seems to be going just fine until we see the look on the doctor's face. Something's happened here. The baby's arms and legs are broken, and that baby is really fragile, like, I don't know, something really breakable. Anyway, fast forward to present day. It's a nice day for a train ride, especially if you're a bit of a creep and a pretty lady with a stomach tattoo decides to sit next to you. Said creep shuffles off his wedding ring and introduces himself as David Dunn, but she's not giving up any peanut butter to David's jam. She awkwardly finds another seat, but something seems very wrong. The train is picking up speed, and everyone is racing to look out the windows on the other side of the train. Then, blackness. David wakes up in the hospital. It's quiet, calm, and he seems to be okay. A doctor asks him some questions. How's your heart? Any allergies? Yada, yada, yada. And oh yeah, how the fuck did you just walk away from that train crash? His train derailed and struck another train. Each and every person on board died a horrible death, and David doesn't have a single scratch. Seems he's pretty sturdy, almost unbendable or breakless or something. David's wife and son are there to pick him up, and we get a little picture into the domestic situation. Seems David has been taking the train back from New York where he had taken a job interview. He doesn't think he got it, but he's still going to move there, alone, without the wife and kid. Seems like a pretty broken relationship. At the train crash victim memorial, David looks on as hundreds of families mourn their loved ones. It's a pretty somber affair, all those shattered families, the crying, the praying. And the one point of interest is a note placed under the windshield wiper of David's car. Printed on the front is simply the title, Limited Edition, and handwritten on the back is the question, have you ever been sick? The answer to that question is no, he never has. According to his boss at work, he's never taken a sick day. His wife can't recall him ever having so much as a cough or a runny nose. That immune system must be unsickable. Well, let's check back in with Elijah, the baby with all the brittle bones. It's the 70s now, and Elijah is a young boy, holed up in his apartment, his arm in a sling, moping as kids play outside in the playground across the street. His mother is talking all about fate and God and how his body might be fragile, but his spirit needs to be strong. Strong like something that doesn't break all the time. Elijah isn't having it, though. The kids even have a nickname for him. They call him Mr. Glass. But Mom is a present for him. It's nicely gift-wrapped and is the perfect antidote to Elijah's depression. Only problem is it's outside on the park bench, and he'll have to overcome his fragility to collect. He musters up the courage to get out there, and inside the box is a comic book. And another one will be waiting for him out here every time he decides to come out. And what a great mom. It's almost like a superhero origin story with a mom like that. Back with Elijah, but it's present day now. He's showing a piece of art to a potential buyer. It's the original artwork from the comic book cover we saw him with as a kid. But this isn't kid stuff. Elijah explains the ins and outs of the art, how the realistic depiction of the characters is unique for the time period, the difference in proportions that communicate the heroism and villainy. This is vintage. And he's made a sale until it becomes clear that this rich douchebag is just buying an expensive toys for his 4-year-old son, Jeb. Elijah is taking none of that shit, and this asshole better GTFO before he gets a glass cane up his ass. Then David Dunn shows up with his son. See, he got a note written on this art gallery stationery asking him if he has ever been sick. So what gives? Elijah sits him down and tells him of his theory. See, he's studied comic books his entire life, what with being in the hospital pretty much all the time. He believes that comic books are the last surviving form of a picture-driven storytelling tradition that passed down tales of humans with extraordinary abilities who are here to protect the weak. So he's monitored all the disasters in the city recently, the plane crash, the hotel fire, the train disaster, waiting for the lone survivor who was miraculously unharmed. Elijah describes his own condition, osteogenesis imperfect, which causes his bones to be incredibly brittle. His theory is that if he is so breakable, then there must be someone else at the other end of the spectrum, someone strong, someone unshatterable or something, someone who never gets sick, never gets hurt, someone those stories are about, someone like David. but David tells him he has been hurt in a car accident in high school that ended his promising football career. So then David's like, okay then, we'll just back away slowly now. Thanks for the glass of water and we'll see you never, crazy glass bones dude. But Elijah persists. He shows up at the local college football stadium where David works as a security guard, asks more questions, provides more logic. David even gets a vision of a guy in a camo jacket with a gun tucked in his pants. Hardly conclusive proof, but it's not like Elijah's some weird raving terrorist lunatic like a supervillain or anything. Elijah asks one more thing. In that car accident, was anyone else in the car? And David tells him yes. His future wife, Audrey. Instead of taking in the game, Elijah follows the camo jacket guy, but with the brittle bones and cane and all, he barely keeps up and takes a tumble down some concrete stairs to the subway station, just in time to see camo jacket guy leap over the turnstile, revealing a gun tucked in his pants, just as David envisioned. Elijah's fucked up. No, seriously, he has all of the injuries, including something called a spiral fracture of his leg. He's going to be cruising Professor X style for a long time. He tells the doctor that all the kids called him Mr. Glass. He goes to see a physical therapist to help with his recovery. And oh, look at that. It's Audrey Dunn, David's wife. He probes for info, trying to seem inconspicuous, and finds out that David was a star football player, but all that ended because of the car crash. And it's a good thing, too, because she hates football. All those broken bones and torn tendons, it's the exact opposite of what she does. She sees through his ruse, though, and uncovers his theory about David. In the meantime, David gets called away from work. His son, Joseph, got into a fight at school. He wanted to take on some bullies, thinking he might have superpowers like his old man. Spoiler alert, he totally does not have superpowers. But while at the school, the nurse reminisces about a time when David, when he was about Joseph's age, got in some trouble around the pool and almost drowned. David is starting to sound a little more human. Almost drowned in the pool, messed up in a car accident. Even a lame superhero like Aquaman or that guy who shoots green arrows or whatever would be tougher than that. Audrey tells David that Elijah came to see her that day, and he agrees that the dude is seriously nutty. But before anyone can call the police or anything, their son joins them in the kitchen. Hey guys, how's it going? Oh, by the way, I'm just going to shoot Dad here with this loaded revolver, okay? He'll totally be fine though, because he's unhurtable or break-proof or something. No, seriously, it'll be fine, and it'll prove that the broken bones guy with the crazy afro is totally normal, and telling the truth that David's a goddamn superhero. Well, if David's superpowers are stern parenting and bluffing like a motherfucker, he performs here in spades. David tells Elijah to go kick rocks. Seriously, enough with the superhero shit. He takes his wife out on a date. Maybe they can start over, but something's wrong. Something's been wrong for years. And David maybe realizes that he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. After the date, he calls Elijah and admits that he was never injured in that car accident. He's never been injured, like ever. And now he realizes that something has been missing in his life all along. Elijah tells him to go someplace where people are and let nature take its course. David goes to the train station, all the people coming and going, and every so often he gets a flash of someone doing something bad, some trivial, some not. But how to choose who to help, who gets saved, and who is left to suffer. David sees the janitor invading a home and killing a man who lives there, or lived there. That's the one. David follows the janitor back to the house, which is in disarray. He's too late to save the man he saw in his vision, but he's still in time to rescue the kids. He tussles with the intruder, and after taking a plunge in the pool and almost drowning, he puts the Roddy Piper chokehold on the bad guy, and while it might not exactly be happily ever after, it's not too shabby for his first hero outing. With David now awake to his role in the world, his family life can fall into place. The end. Oh, wait, there's still Elijah to thank. At the art gallery, Elijah is hosting a big exhibition, and it looks like things are going pretty well for him, too. And this is the part where they shake hands and live happily ever after. The end. Except David gets a vision. He sees Elijah at the airport when the plane exploded. Sees him at the hotel bar when an employee tells him what a death trap the place would be if a fire broke out. And finally, getting out of the conductor car of the train David was on at the beginning, Elijah was responsible for all of it. In his search to find the hero, he had become the villain, and he should have known because the kids called him Mr. Glass. And now all the kids will call David Mr. Indestructible Guy or Uninjurable. Breakless? Oh, no, I got it. Break free. Yeah, well, whatever. The end. That's Unbreakable. So what are your initial thoughts?
Oh, they could have called him Bouncy.
God damn it, I didn't think of that. Sitting here for like an hour and a half trying to figure out names.
Good synopsis. Maybe laugh a few times, that's good. On paper, very good story, good build up. It's a superhero movie, but it's a radically different one from all the other superhero movies that were out at the time, from the past. I enjoy the build up on paper, for sure. And then the twist at the end, I feel is, because you've almost described the whole movie, is very effective. Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots to take in there, lots to enjoy.
So let's go in scene by scene as we do. And I always forget, I've seen the movie quite a few times. It had been a few years since I'd seen it before watching it for the show today. But the opening scene of the mother in the department store break room or whatever, I always forget that the movie opens this way.
It's a very effective scene.
Well, yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. So what are the things that stand out for you in this opening?
Her performance, number one, the doctor's performance, and it's heartbreaking. It pulls you right in, establishing Elijah as a sympathetic character. Mm-hmm. And in any kind of movie, whether it's a superhero movie or not, when we find out later he is a villain, that becomes even more of a surprise and a shock because of how effective he was drawn out from the beginning. And I really think that the mother here and the doctor here just sell this entire scene. It's very well directed, very well acted, and tugs at your heart because you feel for this baby.
Yeah, it's very tragic for sure. So the situation alone, you definitely feel for the guy. And it's, it's not like, let's say you're watching X-Men, the first X-Men, where you see Magneto in a concentration camp and you feel for the guy because obviously you know how horrible it is, but he's the bad guy later. So because he's the bad guy, it sort of tempers some of the sympathy you feel. But, if you don't know what this movie's about, none of that gets tempered. It's just a terrible tragedy to what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And, my favorite part about this was the doctor's performance, because it's all like that look on his face, right? Where he's trying to smile, but his eyes are like popping out of his head, like, holy fuck, what's going on here? And asking the women, it's like,
It's like that Ernie Hudson, I've seen shit that'll turn you white.
Yeah,
look.
Exactly, yeah.
That look.
It's totally exactly what, that's what he should have said. He's like, this shit, like you
just turned me white.
It just turned you laser black before, right? But also some of the foreshadowing because we see a lot of the scene shot through the reflection in the mirror. That'll kind of come back later a couple times. But yeah, I thought it was a very effective opening. I thought it was great. So then we cut to the train scene here where he's sitting there, and then we get a feel. It kind of looks like he's a bit of a douche because he sees the girl, putting her bag above in the overhead compartment there. We see the tattoo on her stomach, and he's just like struggling to get his wedding ring off. So I don't know that the intention here was to make him look like kind of a dick, more that, his marriage is, idea that the marriage is on the rocks, but I think it kind of comes across as a bit of an asshole here.
Well, of course, like a sleazebag, right? So
yeah, total sleaze.
Yeah, but what I actually liked about this scene here too is the camera perspective, because really how it's moving back and forth between the seats from a lower point of view, and you realize at the end of that whole conversation between Bruce Willis and that unknown lady and then the little girl's like watching this whole thing and listening to the whole conversation. And then at the end, you see her just kind of giving Bruce Willis the stare down. Right?
Yeah, so, exactly. Like even she knows he's being a creep. Yeah.
You fuck. Seriously.
Yeah. I liked his line there where he's trying to flirt with her a bit, and he's like, are you looking for any male synchronized swimmers? I thought it was, kind of funny. Good line. But yeah, she's not having any of his garbage there. We get the idea that something's going on with this train. We cut to a shot of his kid watching TV, and he sees that the train his dad is on has been seriously fucked up. Huge, huge crash. Very difficult rescue effort. So we get an idea of the scope of this disaster. Just looks like a giant piece of garbage. And then we cut to the hospital as he wakes up in the emergency room. This scene here, recut, it basically forms the original teaser for this film. And I was a little bit disappointed because I like how the scene plays out in the teaser. They cut a lot of the lines out for the film here, but everything's looking okay. I really like the perspective of how this film is shot. So we kind of have like Bruce Willis in the background with the doctor, where the focus is in the foreground, which is sort of out of focus and blurry. You can see doctors working on
a patient.
The other surviving patient who's slowly
dying.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I like how the blood just starts seeping through.
That's a skillfully masterful shot from a director's point of view, because you could see other things that are happening and you're not focused on it. You're focused on the conversation, but then you just realize how tragic and the scope of the accident that's happening, that you find out that after like maybe a few minutes in the conversation that person in the foreground is the lone survivor. And then after that point, then you see the blood seeping through and you go, fuck, he's not going to make it.
Yeah, very, very effective. And it's hard to sort of tell well. Like, it's one shot, but there's almost two stories happening in that one shot, and they both inform the other. It is very skillfully done. It's nice to see some of that kind of, originality and creativity in a movie shot. I mean, a lot of movies now, I find shots are composed very well, but they're not composed with a lot of creativity to help tell the story or sell the atmosphere in any kind of subtle way. So, I mean, I love the doctor. At first it's just the regular questions, but he becomes more incredulous. It's like, okay, where were you sitting in the train? Sitting next to the window. Like, you were in the passenger car? Like, he just didn't get it. And then he's like, you don't have a scratch on you. And I really enjoyed that performance from the doctor. Only a couple of lines, and he's not in the movie at all past this point, but very effective, I thought, there. And we still don't know what the fuck's going on, basically. So, he comes out, and again, as he comes into the hall, after coming out, basically being released, his son is there, his wife is there, and this is where we kind of get the first domestic situation there. So did that work well for you at this point, just to get the idea of what the relationship was like?
Oh, yeah, extremely. Because, obviously there's the bond, because mother and the father with the son, happy that and their history between husband and wife, she's glad that he's okay. But their relationship is so strained that they still cannot manage more than a very brief hug. Like, it's they're not close at all, and then they barely touch hands, and then they walk away independently. So, yeah, very good scene.
Yeah, very good scene. So, the next couple scenes, like, he goes to the memorial, not a lot there. This is where he kind of sees the note in his windshield, "Have you ever been sick?" And it's what I find that M. Night liked to do in some of his earlier works is, like, every scene kind of leads to another question, and sometimes it's just...
that's the MacGuffin. He's set the MacGuffin right there, right? He's planted it in that hospital scene, and then it's like the Ark of the Covenant is, that conversation, just like in Raiders, they had that, and then let's go. The Ark of the Covenant conversation in Raiders is just a simple note on the windshield here. Have you ever been sick?
Yeah, that's right. Which is, coincidentally, that's one of M. Night's favorite films, is Raiders of the Lost Ark, but how could it not be? Because it's so good. Every scene kind of leads down to another layer, and it kind of goes slowly. He goes to work, he asks the boss's assistant or secretary or whatever, have I ever taken a sick day? He's trying to answer the question. Turns out, no, he hasn't. Gets the raise, which I thought was kind of a funny aside there. It's like, all right, yeah, you've never taken a sick day. Here's your raise. Asks his wife.
So just before we go, I just want to kind of talk about this, something that hit me when I was rewatching this movie, and I hadn't seen an M. Night movie in a while, but I remember the style. Everything is very monotone and one note. Like the way that conversation he had with his boss, for example. Everyone is just on and I don't know if obviously it's intentional from the director, but it's like that in all of his movies. I think it works here, but like, say the scene between him and his boss, and it's kind of just like no one's excited, agitated, their emotions are very low key. Even the boss saying, that's a good way of trying to get a raise out of me. Well done. And he's saying it kind of in almost the exact same way as I'm saying it in terms of emotional level. It's something that just struck me right away when I was watching this movie again. And that same emotional level is carried almost all the way through to the movie, with maybe a few hints from Samuel L. Jackson being a little bit more emotional, but everyone else is kind of, that low key, monotone. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I did make a note of that, and I think it carries through every aspect of the film. I mean, it is very low key. Like you say, nobody gets all that emotional or all that animated except for a few key points in the movie. Bruce Willis, in his trademark style of the 2000s and beyond, where he basically is sleepwalking through the film, but it works in service of this particular character in this context.
Yes.
The shots are well composed, but very, very simple. Not a lot of camera work, not a lot of, there's not a lot of fast editing, and everything is very, what you see is what you get. So definitely that's the style, which I really love. I love how it's composed and shot and written and all of that. Very simple. I mean, the last movie we did on the show, Frailty, where we talked about, Bill Paxton being, employing sort of a minimalist style, but ultimately just sort of being too simplistic. I think this is sort of the counterpoint to that, showing like this is a guy who has a mastery of minimalism. Like he knows how to compose exactly each shot with exactly what you need and not an ounce more, whether that's for the performance from your actor, whether that's the composition of the shot, the editing, whatever. Everything is just what it needs to be and no more. And I think with the subject material, and because he's done most of his films have a supernatural undertone, it helps ground some of the more fantastical elements, I think, with such a simple composition. Nothing's overblown. There's no special effects. Everything's pretty normal. Like when you go your day-to-day life, kind of talk monotone, you just having conversations with people, everything's pretty basic. So I think it fits the subject matter really well. It brings it back down to earth a bit.
I mostly agree with you. It's just because from him and his family's perspective, he's in a dark place.
Yeah.
His relationship with his family is not good. It seems like a depressing situation. Come to learn that he's just has this void in his life that he will fulfill later on with what he comes to learn of himself. So I can understand from an emotional state of his mind, he would be that way. This fits. But everyone else around him, this is more of a problem I have with M. Night's films. It's oversaturated with this type of emotional state that I find it sometimes hard to get enthralled with his movies because everyone's operating at the same level. And then it takes away from the performance of the main character in his situation because he's in that state. Everyone's there.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. You could kind of buy like his family might be all in the same state because, they're sort of in the same situation. Yeah. But everybody else, maybe it doesn't fit. I think Samuel L. Jackson breaks out of that a little bit. He's not quite so monotone.
And that's what I said, with the exception of him in a couple of scenes. Right.
We'll definitely get to more of that. So we flash back now to Elijah as a young boy sometime in the 70s. And he's got a broken arm, and his mother's trying to encourage him to get out there. So, she sort of puts the dog treat on the park bench outside to get him to go outside. So this is a pretty formative scene here, I think, for this character. Again, I think we feel the sympathy for this poor kid. Obviously he's got some issue with his bones at some point. His mom is trying to bolster his spirit. And I thought it was an interesting way to introduce, the comic book theme here to the film. So what are your thoughts on this introduction or furthering of the origin story here?
I know it was done in the past for the characters, but I kind of wish that, someone does a fan edit where he goes to the park bench, opens it up, and it's like the Nightfall episode where Bane breaks Batman's back. I mean, here you go, son. Enjoy this.
That would have been pretty good, actually. Yeah.
You just see the emotional wreck that he's in after that, right?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, but aside from that, a very effective way. I mean, it's awesome. One of the things I really enjoy about this movie is actually the mom and her relationship with her son. I wish actually there were more scenes like this. I know she pops up at the end and she's proud of Elijah, but really the focus is not about their relationship. But I just felt she did such a good job. I wanted to see more of her. I loved her conversation with her son, trying to get him out and, giving him a bit of a hard time, but challenging him. You can't just stay here. You have to do something. You're more than this. And it's interesting how he took that challenge and then warped it to become the person that he is. So I enjoyed these scenes quite a bit.
They should have named her Martha.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good scene. I kind of like the camera work where he's turning the comic book around in his lap and the camera follows it around, but to keep it upside down, which I think is...
Because he totally didn't get it.
Yeah. Well, as we'll talk about, so the next scene where we come back to present day, where Elijah's in his art gallery, and he talks about, he's talking about the drawing and how the hero has sort of the classic square jaw and all that, but the disproportionate size of Jaguaro's head to his body, we kind of come back to it later, but it's part of the skewed perspective that the villain has on reality. So when that comic book is turning around, the camera's turning around with it, like he's seeing it
upside down, inverted.
Exactly.
Skewed perspective. Yeah. So it's brilliant setup. And not only that, I mean, it's completely telegraphed after you see the movie when you go back and you go, oh yeah, you have all the signs. He's the bad guy because he gives it right away when he says Bruce Willis has the square jaw. Samuel L. Jackson in this movie, like he's more long, thin, slender, kind of like a creepy guy.
The disproportionate size of his head, right? Because the afro and stuff.
He's got the weird afro, the Kramerica Industries afro going there. So yeah, I mean, it's completely telegraphed and well played because I mean, at this time, still year 2000, these type of movies aren't that well popularized in pop culture. So people are not really expecting these kind of twists to happen at the end. So for this movie, M. Night's doing a really good job planting all the seeds.
Yeah, and this was well before the superhero craze exploded. This was, we had X-Men, I think, at this point, or maybe not. We didn't have Spider-Man yet. This was well before the explosion of, what is just basically going to the movies now. I really like this scene where he's in the art gallery describing the art to this guy, like trying to make a sale, like this is art, it's vintage, and how he's describing it. Thought it was great. And this guy's just like, my son Jeb is going to go berserk. And he's like, whoa.
Should have been Bort. Or out of Bort license plates.
Should have been. I love his lines here. This is, like we get Samuel L. Jackson getting a little more animated. He's like, do you see any Teletubbies in here? Do you see a plastic tag on my shirt? Do you see a little Asian kid? Like, no, get the fuck out. I love this scene. I thought it was great.
When Samuel L. Jackson starts insulting people,
fuck off.
It's brilliant.
It's
brilliant. You're like engrossed. I want to just see 2 hours of that.
I'd love to see 2 hours of him just cussing this fucking rich asshole. Right. Yeah. Over a comic book would be fantastic. So we get a little insight into his character, and he's obviously not a welcoming, open guy. Like he comes off as a bit of a snob, obviously. Even as David walks in, he doesn't even turn around to look. He's just like, we're appointment only, which is a nice little snapshot of his character. But he got the note there, so they sit down, and this is where Elijah lays it all out for him. So, he talks about, or he asks him first, like, you ever been injured? You ever been sick? He thinks he's been sick. His son's with him. He says he was in the car accident in college, which ended his football career. He's got the skepticism, but then he talks about what he thinks comic books come from. The last link to their, this old sort of pictorial storytelling tradition where they tell stories of these people with extraordinary people who were here to protect us. So this, I thought, was a tough part of the script to sell. Yeah. Not because the lines are poorly written, but because this is a leap, right, for any sane person to make. So how do you think he handled it, and how do you think the movie handled it?
I mean, that's a very good question, and I agree. For any kind of sane conversation, if you're someone who's well-established and a businessman, savvy businessman, as this guy seems to be, he's spouting this as it's part of natural human history. It's something so important that it's part of our fabric. And it kind of is. It's a way to tell tales, no different than how, say, religion has told its tale and the multiple facets of religion there. So I can understand where he's coming from. So it's not too much of a leap in terms of the subject matter, but because we come to realize he's insane, it's not too much of a leap for me from a story perspective. And then you see how Bruce Willis's character David and his son are kind of like, okay. Yeah. I expected him to break out in the, doesn't anyone do the Bat2C anymore? It's like they kind of slowly step away. Right? I thought they handled it quite well. It wasn't too much of a leap for me in terms of how he was selling the importance of comic books and the way it tells its stories and characters.
Yeah. Another question I have is, so prior to watching this movie the first time, if you remember, were you aware that this was the core concept?
No. To be honest, it's hard for me to remember, but my guess would be no.
Okay. The only reason I ask is I had no idea, like when I saw the trailers and when the movie came out, it's not like I saw it on opening night. I didn't know that this was the central conceit, but it was spoiled for me before I actually got to see the movie. And I was really disappointed that it was spoiled because I wanted to see that.
How'd you get spoiled?
I think, if I recall correctly, as you've alluded to before many times, working at the movie theater, I think I just went into the theater for, as part of the standard part of the job, and that this was the scene that was playing.
Oh.
And so I was like, oh shit, that's what's happening here? Well, fuck, now I really need to see this movie. But I was disappointed because I wanted to see it, and I would have loved to have been able to go through the movie and find out that this was what it was about. That doesn't really matter, but I was disappointed that I didn't get that chance.
It's kind of unveiled to you half an hour into the movie.
Yeah.
And I love that. You don't know this genre. It doesn't feel like it. And that's the special aspect of this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't telegraph that that's what it's about. Having seen The Sixth Sense, you're like, okay, it's going to be some supernatural stuff, and it totally goes in a different direction. It's a bold play, and I think it works great. I really like this. I really like how they play it after he lays out his theory, and David's just like, Joseph, don't take another sip of that water. Go throw it in the trash. We're getting out of here.
He did a little too much LDS.
Yeah, exactly. A little too much LDS in the 60s. But he loves Italian, and so do you. So they get out of there. He doesn't get any answers. And there's a little bit of a scene here between David and his wife, and I just want to talk a little bit about this for a second. So we have the wife, Audrey, played by Robin Wright Penn at the time, and she says, I've made a decision, just want to know if you've been with anybody else, since we've been having problems, says no, we get a little emotion. This is the first time we get really any emotion out of anybody in the movie here. So what's your feeling on Robin Wright and, this character, Audrey, the wife, and how she kind of fits into the story?
Well, I have multiple feelings of Robin White, none of which I can share here on the podcast.
Yeah. Nothing's relevant to the story right now.
Yeah, I love her in House of Cards.
Oh, yeah. She's fantastic.
She's fantastic actor on that show. Yeah, she's a beautiful woman. This scene, I really enjoy this scene. It's like, well, just tell me it doesn't matter one way or another. And then she has that emotional reaction of relief that he has not had an affair. I love that scene. I love the way it played out. It felt very real and grounded. And that's what I liked about it. I thought she did a very good job in this movie, but like my other complaint, even though there's a bit of emotion here and a couple other little small spurts, it's still so low key and depressive. I mean, I don't know the right terminology. This whole movie it's got the emotional state of someone who's, almost about to black out from being drunk. It's just like, it's so low key, it's like they can hardly stand on their own feet. That's how bare the emotion is in this movie. And I get it because of their situation, but it just becomes tiresome when I get through additional scenes with them, like especially when they go on their date. Almost uncomfortable to watch, and you're starting to check your wristwatch there because it's just like, God, I need this movie to do something else.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, it doesn't move around from different, states of energy, if you will. Like, it is all played really low. And in this scene, although I really like this scene, and she does a heck of a job. Really, if you look at her performance through the whole film, she does a heck of a job with really nothing much to work with. And the reason I brought it up is, I don't know, I've just kind of become more aware of it in recent years watching films is, sometimes the female character is just there to sort of service the man's storyline. Like, she doesn't really have much of a purpose in this film other than to be, I don't want to say the love interest because that isn't really the case, but just to be sort of the woman that she's just the wife, I guess, in the movie, right? She doesn't have anything else going on. She's just waiting for him to kind of come back to her. Like, she said, well, I made a decision. I think, whatever you want to do is all good. You want to give it another go, I'm up for it. She doesn't have a lot of agency. And I don't know. It bugs me more and more nowadays when the female character doesn't have any agency or her only purpose is to be So, but she does a really good job with what she has to work with. And especially in this scene, I think was probably her best.
But I also want to point out now that at the end of the movie, when you realize it's you're at this point now where you're starting to realize it's a superhero movie at the end, you definitely know it's a superhero origin story. She's still kind of the crux or folly and weakness of the superhero. She falls into that stereotype, and she's the reason why he didn't really truly find himself.
Yeah, well, let's
reach his potential.
So hold that thought. We'll talk about it when we come to the scene because I think that's a really important piece to talk about for sure. So, but let's get back into chronological order. So we get back to David's life. He's at work. So we see as a security guard at a football stadium, and Elijah shows up, is kind of pestering him and asking him questions. David being a nice, polite guy, probably doesn't want to come across as racist because he's a bald white dude. And, that just doesn't, the optics of that are not good.
You could have called him Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus. That was a good line too, actually, in Die Hard. So they have the conversation, like, you got to do whatever you want. Again, he's kind of being a nice guy, but there's that point where he brushes up against the dude in the camo jacket, has a little flash, says we're going to do some pat downs, and they, explains to him, I kind of saw dude was maybe carrying a gun. Didn't see it, but just had a picture of it in his mind. And I thought this was kind of interesting as well because it starts to bring David along on the journey. It's like, well, yeah, okay, I guess, I saw this thing, and Elijah's like, well, maybe it's this, these guys in the comic books that have superpowers. Maybe it's based just something on instinct here. So this is sort of the first sense that we get that maybe David's going to kind of come along on this journey here. He's probing about the car accident. And we find out that Audrey was also in the car when he had the accident. So we're getting a little bit more information. Again, like I said before, we just get another thin layer of the onion getting peeled away sort of every scene that we go. And that's, again, part of what I like about this guy's style is every scene means something. Every scene we find something out. But every scene we also get another question that's asked. So, I mean, I don't know that there's anything else going on in the stadium scene here. Is there anything else that, you kind of wanted to add?
Oh, yeah. Just Samuel L. Jackson screams as he tumbles down the stairs. This is like when Anakin cuts off his arm. Ah! Ah! He does it so well.
He does do it well, yeah.
could listen to that on a loop for hours. Entertaining.
I think they did a good job with the sound there. It just felt like you hear every snap of every bone as he tumbles down this thing. It was just, ugh.
Actually, I love the shot of the glass, and I find it interesting that he has a glass cane.
Yeah.
So I love how that shatters first, and then it leads to him shattering.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool choice as well. Yeah, when we see the guy in the camo jacket, sure enough, he does have a gun tucked in his waistband there.
It'd be funny if he's lying there about to pass out. Worth it. And he passes out.
And then down. Yeah. So David comes home, meets his son, wants to play some football with some guys in the park, says no. They go to the basement. He's hitting the bench press, and his son's being a total douche and adding too much weight there, and he's struggling through it. And I like the conversation they have where Joseph, his son's like, hey, do you think you could beat up Bruce Lee? I love that conversation. A nice little bit of levity there. And then, he finds out, he keeps lifting more weight. So again, sort of an indication that something else is going on here. So this is kind of a small little scene. What did you think of that interaction there?
Good. The only problem I have is I'm not really enjoying the performance of this kid. I mean, it's hard to, as we've talked about a few times, to find the right kid performer. He is just a kid. He's just, for some reason, just grading me the wrong way. I just want to punch his lights out for some reason.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a little kid. I want to punch him in the face.
There comes a time when a house has been so damaged by termites, right? So I need to
your house can become so damaged by termites that you have to punch a kid in the head.
Yes. So give the man a gold star, right? So there you go.
I figured we should bust some caps instead.
Yeah. But I like the scene of him, the kid lying and then adding on more weight, finally convincing him, okay, let's lift more. And it was good, nice little scene to show that he has some hidden talent there.
I kind of like the kid. That's interesting that you hate him so. I kind of liked him. I thought he did a decent job here. And as we'll talk about.
I was missing Jake Lloyd after The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, they should have had Jake Lloyd here. Yeah. Exactly.
It should have been Jake Lloyd. Yeah.
Oh, I saw your laser sword. Anyway.
Are you an angel yet?
Oh, boy. He's the worst. Anyway, so Elijah's in with the doctor there, and he's just broken all up and down. The worst sounding part of the injury to me was the spiral fracture in his leg. I had never heard that before or since.
I'm wondering if there is such a thing as a spiral fracture.
Yeah, I was going to look at, I mean, the condition that he describes is a real condition.
I'm expecting you to read medical journals. You should be a doctor by the end of these podcasts.
I've read the medical journals, but
I've read them. I've read the medical journals.
I've read the medical journals. It's more on the mental health stuff so that I can deal with you on the podcast as opposed to physical stuff, which is less important. So,
well played.
Yeah. I guess it's a bit of a leap, but he finds a physical therapist, which happens to be David's wife. It's a little too convenient.
Yeah, this is the one thing where it's like, I know you could talk about destiny all you want, but yeah, a little too coincidental. I'll let bygones be bygones. They don't linger on this too much.
Yeah, that's true. And it's really the only case, of this in the movie. The whole movie's not built around this type of coincidence. It's more of a fact-finding mission where we learn more about, two things. We learn about, the accident, the seriousness of it. And also we get the hint, like Elijah kind of needs to come to the realization that it was her. Exactly. Like he wasn't injured. He gave it up for her. And this was, I guess, the most economical way to give him the hint that was the case, as opposed to David telling him later, I did it for her, which would have been probably cheesy. So it's okay, I guess.
Yeah, I like the way he found out. It's just from Audrey's perspective, you can sympathize if someone's in that business of physiotherapy. I can't have my husband play sports because I'm a physiotherapist. It's what I do. It's all I do. So I don't know. I found that a bit of a stretch. I can't be with somebody who plays sports because I'm a physiotherapist.
Yeah, it's a little black. It's a little too black and white. Yeah, exactly. It's like, who do you think's keeping you in money here, lady? Like, you're glad that there are football players out there so you can fix them up. I mean, shit. So we get another scene here where he's at the stadium. I don't know if this is entirely possible. It might have just been M. Night Shyamalan's vanity where he likes to put himself in his own movies, where we get David at the stadium again, and he brushes up to against this guy and sees him.
I also find it interesting that he always seems to play this, kind of creepy douchebag.
Well, that's just kind of the look when you have a certain face that you play what you can play. You know what I mean? So,
I guess I can relate.
Yeah, exactly. You're not exactly leading man material, dude. And neither is M. Night. Let's face it. So this is where he's kind of testing out his vision himself. He's trying to go along with it. Now, I wasn't sure at this point if I had thought that his vision was the future.
Well, now, which vision are you talking about here?
Well, he's the vision of the guy dealing drugs in the stadium.
Okay.
He sees the vision. The guy's he's gonna go and drop the drugs in the trash in the restroom. Mm-hmm. And another guy's gonna come pick it up. Searches him. Doesn't have any drugs on him. So I just wanted to say that now, so because we're going to talk about the visions when it comes up later. But I was confused as to what he was seeing, or when he was seeing what he was seeing. Is I guess what I'm saying. So,
but I guess then he just sees his visions are all based in the past,
right? So
I guess that's what we find out in the train station is that he can't see, even though he has kind of instincts about someone in the present, but his actual visions are of the actions of the past.
Well, I guess what I was getting at is the movie trying to be ambiguous about it being future or past? Because he's trying to act on the vision, right? I get the impression that he doesn't know, or he thinks this is something that's going to happen. So he's patting the guy down, no drugs.
Well, he's confused at this point.
Yeah.
He had the vision. So now he's going to say, okay, well, he thinks it's going to happen in the future, or he's about to do it. So then he realizes nothing's on him because we know then after that point it happened in the past.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the movie wanted us to not understand at this point as well as David.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point. So to leave it that surprise or that additional piece of information and revelation in the train sequence, or the train station sequence.
Right. I mean, we'll have more visions to handle later. So he gets called away from work. Joseph gets in a fight at school, so he goes to the school to pick him up, talking to the school nurse, and this is where we get the revelation. The nurse remembers David from when he was a kid and almost drowned.
So again, back to your point, the script is very tight in the sense that there's no wasted scenes. Every scene, as you said, is revealing another layer, another little piece. There's nothing wasted. Again, I didn't want to go back. It's kind of getting annoying with this kid, and okay, now the kid's got to get into trouble. He's got to take care of the kid, and we're going to get another thing with the kid later with the gun. And that might be the only one where it's kind of like the scene where I think that really stood out that didn't need to be there.
Where the kid's talking?
No, when the kid pulls the gun on the dad.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that, I guess. But at least this scene, you find out that he had no memory, but we as the audience and the character finds out or remembers that he had the issue with the pool. So water.
Yeah. No, I thought that was pretty tight. So then that does lead kind of into the next scene that you alluded to here. Audrey comes home and says Elijah came to see her, and they kind of talk about that a bit. And then Joseph comes in with the gun. You don't like this scene? Okay.
I don't mind the scene between David and Audrey. I just found this gun thing, it just felt like a wasted. You're absolutely right. Everything to this point, there's been a purpose. Here I feel there's almost no purpose to this scene. It's like, oh, okay, it's just kind of a little something has to get us on the edge of our seat again. Oh my God, is he actually going to do it? He's going to shoot his dad. Nothing happens, but it's kind of betraying what's come before. Everything, there's been a purpose for every scene. Here I felt there was really no purpose. It was more just a stunt for the audience, just to get people to hold their breaths for a few seconds.
Yeah, you could be right about that. I hadn't really thought about it, but you're right. You could probably cut this scene without losing anything.
I would have. If I edited this movie, this would be one of the first things to go.
I just love the Bruce Willis style of parenting here. It's like, yep, I'm invulnerable, and if you shoot me, I'm out of here.
I'm going.
I liked how that interchange was written. His lines is like, yeah, you're right, but...
They recorded this between him and Sly for Expendables 3.
Yeah, exactly. Friends don't shoot each other.
Yeah.
Much better than anything that was in any of the Expendables for sure. So perhaps the only purpose that this scene could have served, might have been, David telling Elijah to get lost, which he sort of does, but doesn't really tell him to get lost. Mm-hmm. Like in the next, he's like, stay away from my son tried to shoot me, I want you to stay away from me and my family, but it doesn't really take. So yeah, I guess you're right in that sense that it could have gone. It probably could have gone. But so Elijah doesn't confront David. He talks to David again, says he saw that the dude in the camo jacket had the gun in his pants, tries to prove his vision was real, and then he accuses him of faking his injury in the car accident for love. So for his wife. So, which is basically correct, I suppose. I mean, he wasn't injured. We'll come back to that a little bit later, but he also tells Elijah that he was almost drowned in the pool there. So, I did get hurt in the car accident. I almost drowned. I'm just a normal guy. Yeah, you're wrong. Yeah. So presumably Elijah's very shaken by this. He goes to that comic store, and I love the scene in the comic store where the guy yells back, he's like, "You better not be jacking up in Japanese comic." That was pretty funny, and I like this guy. He only has a few lines, but he's just like, "Oh shit," doesn't.
He's in a no-win scenario. He needs to get rid of him, but the guy's in a wheelchair with a broken leg. So if he's rough on him or it really agitates him, he could get into trouble with the police.
Yeah.
So I feel for the store part there. Should have been Kevin Smith.
Should have been Kevin Smith, exactly. Kevin Smith would have overplayed this scene, though, for sure. I like this guy. He's just like, listen, man, I got to get some chicken in me. You know what I'm saying? I like that.
that was a good line.
So he's trying to wheel him out. You can see the look on Samuel L. Jackson's face. He does a good job here because usually Samuel needs to have some lines to get what you're saying, but his face is very emotive here. He's very angry and upset and jacking all this guy's comic books here. I like the end where he just holds one up. He's like, how much for this one? This is a good scene.
I like the scene. Very well played.
We go to the date between David and Audrey. And what was your feeling here on the date, on this scene?
For the life of me, I can't really remember too much of the conversation except for when they're talking about when did they kind of get the first feeling that it wasn't going right or something like that in the relationship. And again, it's just so underplayed, and I get that they're trying to feel each other out and they're still struggling with the relationship, and they're being very careful because they're trying to make it work again, and it's a first date again. You get a sense of a little bit of that nervousness, which is appropriate, and they played the scene very well. But because it's so low key, I really can't judge that they have any kind of chemistry with each other. It's just two actors just kind of generically talking to each other.
Yeah,
and I think that Robin Wright does a better job here because she has a little bit more of that nervous energy about her, and Bruce Willis is just asleep, I guess. But I mean, like, I can believe that it's appropriate for this character, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast. Hard for me to say. I didn't really enjoy it, but it was, I guess, a necessary scene to break things up. Otherwise, everything is too direct. You're going from one thing to one thing to one thing, because after this, I think we're getting to almost the climax of the movie.
Yeah, we are. I liked how the conversation started, where he tells her that his favorite color is rust. It just it just seemed like such a bleak thing to say. She's like, rust? Like, nobody's ever said that in the history of ever. My favorite color is rust. I thought it was a good line and also, tonally appropriate for the film. But I think we did need... They
could have done the Superman scene, like there. It's like, do you like rust? I like rust very much, David.
I think this was necessary to see. We haven't seen enough of their relationship, and it's not, the relationship really isn't totally critical, but I kind of liked how they sort of, laid it out there for each other. Like, when did you think, we weren't going to make it and all of that stuff. And they went through that. But more, I think it was important for David because he articulates to her, like, something's
still not right.
Yeah, something's not right. And he says it to her, and in saying it to her, I think he kind of admits it to himself.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's why this scene is important, because I think that pushes his actions in the next scene when they get home. And there's a little interchange with the babysitter, which is kind of funny because it's sort of mundane, which is what would happen. But he listens to the
kryptonite. Yeah.
Yeah. The kryptonite conversation, the voicemail from Elijah, where, he, waters basically his kryptonite.
That's actually kind of funny now that we talked about this color thing. I'm wondering if that was leading to kryptonite. I'm wondering if that was just a little play on words homage to Superman the movie.
Oh, maybe.
Conversation, because, what is your favorite color? Because, that fairly famous scene in Superman, because it's part of the love story, right? So I'm wondering if M. Night threw it in there as not really a homage, but a little reference. Or as a starting point. Kind of interesting.
That totally could be. And, knowing that he's a huge fan of comic books and superhero movies, that certainly could be the case. So this is where we get after he listens to that, we get the flashback to the car accident when they're kids and the car's turned over in the middle of the street. Audrey's been flung across the road and he's just standing there and he's totally, oh no, she's in the car and he's totally fine. And he rips open the car door to get to Audrey and he's totally fine. She's injured. And it's a little bit comical, but when like a car pulls up and is like, hey, buddy, are you okay? And he looks up, he doesn't say anything, but he kind of has a realization like, yeah, I'm totally fine. Nothing's wrong with me. But he sort of had a Bruce Willis dumbfounded look on his face.
The one thing I didn't like about the scene, though, I felt it was poorly filmed. This is the one scene where I feel just the way it was shot. It wasn't that it was kind of fuzzy because it's kind of a memory. It's just that it just wasn't clear as to what was happening for the audience. Because I remember when I first watched this movie, I didn't get that he ripped the car door open. It wasn't very apparent. Even though when you watch it a few times and it's like, okay, yeah, you did rip open a car door with bare hands. But it just almost, on first glance, and if you're not really, really paying attention, you don't realize that he was in the car. But it's just a little confusing to me. It's not clear. And I have a problem with the way this was shot.
Yeah, that's interesting because I kind of felt the same. I've seen the movie a lot, many times, and I don't ever remember him ripping open the car door either. When I saw it this time, I was like, it's just like you said, okay, well, yeah, obviously he rips the car door open. So, yeah, it seems, I don't know, stylistically inconsistent. Maybe they had the second unit filming this one or something. So, yeah, it doesn't quite, it's almost like it's from a different movie.
It is.
How it's filmed.
And I don't mind that it kind of looks different and has it feel because we're looking at it through as a memory. It's fuzzy. It's not like we're seeing a present event, right? So this is a stylistic choice. I have a time problem and it's supposed to be chaotic, memory chaotic, no problem there. For the audience's perspective, it's just, I felt it could have been a bit better, a bit clearer, a bit more dramatic. I didn't like these scenes at all.
Yeah, fair enough. And, as a flashback, I mean, thankfully it's not too critical in what happens next, but he's kind of admitting to himself what the truth is now. So he calls Elijah back and admits to him that he wasn't injured in the car accident. He's never been injured, basically admitting to Elijah, yeah, you're right about me. They'll accept the truth. And Elijah says, or he asks him what he's supposed to do. Elijah tells him to go somewhere where people are. He's basically telling him, go look for some trouble, which he does. So he goes to the train station and he brushes into people. And, again, part of the stylistic choice here is everybody that he gets a vision from, they all have a brightly colored piece of clothing with the guy in the camouflage jacket. In the stadium originally, M. Night was wearing that jacket and the stadium was blue, I think. And then the lady in the red jacket and all the guys in the stadium here are all wearing bright colors. And we get a taste of the visions that he has of these guys. So I've got my thoughts on the visions, but I'll let you go first as to what he sees here and what the implications are.
Well, before we get to the vision, I was kind of hoping they'd have a little training montage. It doesn't have to rip off Rocky, but maybe he could have ripped off Punch Out and he could have been pulling, that little training montage with Little Mac and his trainer.
Yeah.
To that music, right? As he's running across the street pulling him, right? In his wheelchair or something.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's like tied to his waist, like on a bungee cord or something, running up the hill.
That would have been great, but
that would have been good.
That would have been
fucking wheelchair turns over on a curve.
It turns into a spoof. He goes down the stairs just like OJ.
I told you they called me Mr. Glass, bitch. Be careful. It's like wrapped up in fucking saran wrap and shit.
Bubble wrap.
Yeah, bubble wrap. That's what I meant. Yeah.
But anyways, the visions. Yeah, I liked it. It was very effective. I liked the way it was filmed, slow building. I love how the music starts to really get to a little bit more of a high tempo. Finally, it's like I've been waiting. A bit of a burst of energy, and now we're getting dramatic build up. And then I like it how he just kind of spreads it. First of all, I wanted to say I love the way his outfit was with the raincoat. It was kind of hiding himself in a little bit. And I love the way his hands just stretch out and he starts to, touch people. Not like touch people, but
touch people.
Yeah.
He wasn't groping people.
That's a superhero name. I'm the groper.
Yeah, the groper. That's a Mystery Man superhero for sure. Groper.
You just can't buy a break with the law.
What's your superpower? Well, I touch people's private.
Visions. No, I thought this was great. And the visions themselves, I can't remember each and every one except the main one. I think I remember the first one, the lady stealing the jewelry in the store.
Yeah. There was the dude date raping the drunk girl.
Date raping the drunk girl, and then he couldn't do anything. Ended up with the family, parents or something. There was one more, I can't remember. Oh, yeah, I think it was one more where another group of teenagers throwing a beer bottle. That fucking shit happened to me all the time. So
yeah, no white pervert was saving your ass when somebody was telling you to go back to Africa. That's some Edmonton, motherfuckers.
Yeah, so I think those were it. Funny thing is like, I don't mind the different variety of crime, and I guess that the most shocking one had murder. That's what he chooses. I just kind of wish they were a bit more dramatic, the other vision.
Like more severe crimes, you mean?
Well, they could have done a slow build-up, right? And not that, date rape is not a severe crime, but it's just like, it's the way it was filmed. Again, another problem where it's not dramatic enough. And I kind of wish it was just a little bit more chaotic and a bit more, as you said, severe. And then finally, the last one is the murder. And that's the one. Maybe he couldn't act on the other severe crimes because he wouldn't be given the opportunity because there were families, a train station uniting friends and family. But the janitor was the lonesome body go after him. So
yeah. And it escalated pretty quickly. I mean, again, not to minimize the guy who raped the girl at the party there, because obviously that's a terrible thing. It escalated, like the girl stole some jewelry, and then there's a dude who like
threw a beer bottle at somebody.
Yeah, threw a beer bottle. Oh, and then this guy killed a whole house full of people. It hockey sticked pretty quickly there. But what I really did enjoy about this scene is I thought that this was one of the best representations of one of the problems that Superman would have, which is like, how do you pick? Because you can't save everybody. You can't save everybody. So how do you pick? And
I thought it'd be interesting commentary on humanity. He touched as everybody touched him, he had
so everybody had some in their
crime.
past.
Yeah. He fully embraced his powers, and it's like that sends him almost into a spiraling. That'd be maybe an interesting ending. After this, then he goes to a different place, and then he starts seeing everything and just almost collapses because he can't believe the inhumanity of humanity.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting choice, actually. I think that would have worked.
That's more of a Twilight Zone ending.
Yeah, that is more of a Twilight Zone ending for sure. So, but he has the vision of the janitor invading the guy's house, sees a vision of that guy basically dead. So he follows the janitor to the house, to which he goes back to the scene of the crime, I guess, because he's a pervert. And, he sees his vision had come true. The man of the house, the dad or whatever, is dead, tossed down a staircase. So he manages to rescue the kids there, and then, goes upstairs, sees the wife tied to the radiator. The bad guy's nowhere to be seen. Steps out on the balcony, turns around, and there he is. He gets tossed out into the pool. And again, we know the water is his kryptonite. Starts to drown. That looked like a pretty terrifying situation, actually, where he's not only is he falling into the pool, but he's got that tarp closing in.
That's a great shot.
Yeah, that's a really good shot. Yeah, because at first you don't realize like what exactly happened, and then as you see it, it's like, oh shit! Like,
yeah, it's happening slowly because it's slowed down for the audience, and you just see the edges keep slipping off the tarp, off the edges of the pool, lower. And I love the rain as well. So it's like double jeopardy for him. So it's pretty gripping. One scene, it's like really on your seat.
Yeah, you are on the edge of your seat, and yet it's still very slowly playing out. Like there's not quick cuts or tons of action, but it's very well built, the tension here. So the kids save him from pool, and then he goes and takes care of business. I assume he killed the bad guy there. It looked like that chokehold ended in a neck break.
It was a neck break. Yeah. You definitely got the little silent snap.
Yeah, and like the real, like the last jerking of the head to the side. So Buddy's dead. Fortunately, not too late to save the wife, but he saves the kids. And so then he goes home, and I really like that scene where he walks in, or he comes home, and you just see him hanging his raincoat or the tarp or whatever in the closet there, like Batman hanging up his cape. I really like that shot. And then it's a little weird. He picks up his wife, and there's that, it's kind of I think it's a skillfully done shot because it's all done in one take there. There's no cuts where he's carrying her upstairs. It's sort of ethereal type of shot where he's, she's almost floating in his arms there. And then a callback to an earlier scene where, he says to her he had a bad dream. And, now that he has purpose, she's allowed back in his life, which again kind of goes back to my problem with the female characterization here. But, whatever, I guess it's all good. They're having breakfast the next day. Joseph comes into the kitchen, and David pushes the paper towards his son there, letting him know that, you were right. But let's keep this on the down low. So what did you think about the climax there, and then, the scene right through to the kitchen where they're having breakfast?
I like the scene where it's a slow build where rescuing kids by infiltrating the house, and then you get the little surprise, the guys behind, just about the water pool tarp. Very effective and skillful shots and dramatic build up. And then, the neck break, even though it's a short scene where they're struggling, I think it was well played. I like the music playing over it, the heroic theme finally blaring for him. It's a heroic moment. It's very satisfying. The bad guy, dies. Too bad the mom, but the kids get saved. And when he goes home, he's got the rager finally. It's like, I finally.
Finally.
After all these years, killing a man.
I just killed this motherfucker. I have a huge chub right now.
Yeah. Call me the Rager. Right? So...
They call me the Red Rocket.
Yeah. That was fine. I mean, but I agree with you. Yeah, with respect to her role, it's nothing there. It's unfortunate, but I guess she's necessary for this story. The kitchen scene, fine. I don't mind how they use the newspaper story. I like the drawing and how the kids who he saved know his face. So he's just kind of like the masked stranger coat, and that's kind of cool. And that's very superhero-ish. And it's, all the pieces are falling in place as a superhero origin story. And it's very effective. It's just the only thing I still want to punch that fucking kid looks up and he's like, oh, finally, Dad. Fuck you, you little shit.
Kid, I'm going to throw this fucking pancake into your face.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, pretty much. Just don't like the kid. The scene is effective.
I like the kid, but whatever. We already had that conversation. So, okay, so we get to the final scene of the movie where David shows up at the exhibition at Elijah's art gallery. And, there's lots of people there. Looks like it's going to be great. David meets Elijah's mom, and she's explaining that same picture to him. And she's like, you see the villain's eyes. They're larger than the other characters. They insinuate a slightly skewed perspective on how they see the world, just off normal. And that
gives it away right there.
Yeah, that gives it away right there. That's the whole movie where we often see Elijah reflected in a mirror or upside down because he has that skewed perspective on the world, as we will find out shortly. So they meet up again. David says, you're right. Elijah asks him, do you still feel the sadness? He says, no. So it's like, you finally found your place in the world. And this is where we shake hands, he says. And then, because he touches him for the first time, then we see the visions of the 4 crimes that he's responsible for. So he's in the airport, the plane explodes, the hotel fire, and the train wreck, because we see him getting out of the train. So now we know that he was responsible for all of that. And, Elijah's saying, now that we know who you are, I know who I am. I'm not a mistake. He's accepted his role as the villain. He's always known he was the villain. It's kind of a goofy line, but I like it at the end. He's like, I should have known because the kids, they called me Mr. Glass. I love that line too. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's corny, but yeah, it fits.
Yeah, it's corny, but it totally fits. Yeah, it totally fits. What I feel doesn't fit are the weird captions that come up here.
Yeah, after that, it's like...
Yeah, it's like the movie of the week. The Lifetime movie of the week. Yeah, fuck.
I hate movies that wrap up a story with, verbiage, written verbiage. You're like, this is what happened to this character, this is what happened to this character, what happened to this character. I mean, I don't mind that in a biographical movie. I'll let it slide. But in a movie like this, and it's just, it's just such a downer when filmmakers resort to that cheap trick of finishing the movie. Yeah,
it's so weird. Like, it would have been such a powerful scene if he's just leaving as he's, yelling after him. Like, they called me Mr. Glass, and he just, walks out. That would have been such an awesome way to end it. And it's totally unnecessary. I don't know why he did this. I've been trying to figure it out, why he made the choice, and I can't. I disagree with it no matter what, but I was just like, okay, well, I could disagree with it, but I want to know what his thinking process was, and I just couldn't figure it out.
There might not be anything. It's just, this is the way he wanted to end it, and simple as that. And I think it was a mistake.
It was a mistake, for sure. So that's the end of Unbreakable. So I think we talked about, the style of the film here, and I think we've gone into that. Performances we've talked about.
Well, how about Bruce Willis himself?
Yeah, let's talk about Bruce Willis. Well, why don't you start us off?
Because we talked about, he's an interesting character, Bruce Willis, in reality. But he's become pretty one note and generic as time has gone on. Whether he's trying to purposely move away from energetic and over the top performances, that's who John McClane was, and that's the role that's defined him. So he's had to kind of now become the complete opposite, right? It's like George Costanza.
Yeah.
If that wasn't the right way, doing the opposite might be the correct path, right? So maybe that's what he's trying to do. You watch that episode of Seinfeld and he says, that's it. Maybe. I don't know. In this movie, it makes sense because of the struggles he's having in his family life. But on a general side, I mean, I just bring a lot to the table in this. And it fits for the character, fits for the movie, but I just kind of wish he was a bit more charismatic. But I don't know if that would have been betraying.
Yeah, I don't think that would have fit if he had been charismatic in the context of this film. I mean, it's kind of like
depressed,
yeah, exactly. He's depressed. He doesn't have a place in life. Like, he's the same, like Elijah is the same in the sense that, like, he doesn't know who he is or where he's supposed to be. Is he a mistake? But at least Elijah had a little bit more passion because he thought he was trying to, at least he was trying to find his place. He thought he knew what was wrong, whereas David doesn't have a sense of it at all, right? So,
but the thing here,
he doesn't even know that something's wrong. It's just something's wrong, but he hasn't admitted it to himself. So I think that it's kind of like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. Yeah, it's Keanu Reeves, but for that role, that performance works. You know, like if he did this, you know, he does the same thing in Die Hard 4 and 5, and it's just boring. But here, with a skilled filmmaker who knows what he's doing, his performance in Sixth Sense was much the same, right? Where he was just very monotone and understated. It fits for the film, so like I could give him a pass.
But I'm just wondering if a more seasoned or a better actor would be able to bring a different layer to a performance while still being slightly monotone, slightly low.
And you probably could. Yeah, you probably could.
Right?
But
like
the good thing about...
a little bit more emotive behind the eyes, you know? Like I know he's emotive behind the eyes when he realizes that Elijah was, you know, the real villain. You could see that shock on his face. But the rest of the movie, I didn't get a sense of anything else happening.
Well, I think there isn't anything else happening there because he doesn't have much else going on behind. He's just dead inside. He doesn't feel anything about anything. He doesn't really care about much of anything, right? And one thing I like about Bruce Willis's face is it's very sullen, you know? It's long, it's a little, I don't want to insult, it's not insulting, it's not droopy in a bad way, but you know what I mean? He doesn't look naturally like he's a super happy dude. And that look works really well for the role. So I guess you could find a guy, sure, you could have found, you know, plenty of actors who have more raw talent than Bruce does. But I think the look is right because it's also that chiseled face, which we talked about before for the hero, but a depressed hero. And that's a tough look, I think, to nail down.
And you're right. I'm not going to argue with that. For this role, he did a good job. It's just...
But you are arguing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just something that's always bugged me and still bugs me about Bruce Willis today. It's just like he just feels like he's done the same thing. Like he's like done what ever since Harrison Ford did Witness. Oh, no, not Witness. The Fugitive. He's played Richard Kimball in every single movie except for maybe Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. He was okay there, but you know, he's kind of played the same performance over and over and over again.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was so different than his roles before, and that garnered him a lot of positive critical attention. I'm wondering here if Bruce Willis is kind of doing the same thing.
That could be.
And ever since then, he's been kind of, we can call it greedy and lazy, you can call it sleepwalking, or he's trying to purposely move himself away from all of his earlier roles and saying, well, you know, I can't do that because if I do that, I become John McClane again.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought of that, but it is very much the Harrison Ford syndrome here, I think, for sure. Well, I think that...
Actually, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So this movie started as kind of a mystery/thriller.
Yeah.
And wrapped inside is a superhero.
Yeah.
So how effective of a superhero movie or a mystery thriller into these two different genres is this movie?
How effective is it?
Yeah, how effective is it in those different genres?
You know, not being a huge aficionado of the mystery thriller, I think it works great there because, as we've said, every scene is tight and works to pull away another layer and still ask more questions to drive you further down into the mystery. Slow burn, you know, I feel the tension builds organically and at the right pace through it. So from that criteria, I think it works great as a mystery thriller, you know? Again, not having watched a whole lot of that genre, I think it works really well. As a superhero movie, I think it's a great origin story because we don't often get, I guess we see superhero origin stories. I mean, we know those characters. We've seen Bruce Wayne's parents get shot 1,000 times. You know, we've seen Kal-El get packaged up into a spaceship and shot away from Krypton 1,000 times. You know, we've seen Spider-Man bit by a spider 100 times. Like, we kind of know what's coming. And this just really pays tribute to the entire origin of us not knowing what's going to be and that person not knowing what's going to be, right? In a world where superheroes don't really exist, you know, the Marvel or DC sense. It's a different scene. So yeah, it's not really a superhero movie as we know it, but I think that's why it works. Because it isn't all of those things.
Correct. And I also think it different than other superhero movies in extent. Batman, maybe the one similarity is the fact that he was always kind of had this talent and he never knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the build-up is him on the journey finding out that he is a superhero and he had a special talent. And I'm sure that's been done a dozen times in genres before, the action movies or martial art movies or whatever, you name it, it's probably done. But I really appreciated how different it was here. Like, he didn't really needed to have a tragic event personally to him, like he was involved in a train accident, but it wasn't something like my parents were murdered, or my sister was kidnapped, or I failed my school paper, right? You know, something along those lines that was so traumatic for him. He was just, something was just not right in his life. He was missing, and I felt that was a bit, it's hard to say if that's unique, because I said, I have recollections that I can't pinpoint that's been done before in the revelation of destiny, but I appreciate it here for this genre. Yeah. It feels different than fresh than all the other superhero staples.
I mean, I like the fact that, you know, whether it's true or not, in the context of this universe where, you know, Elijah tries to explain that the comic books are a continuation of this ancient form, and these beings exist just not as, you know, big and commercialized and wearing the tights and stuff, but like it's a version of what is real, which is these people who are extraordinary, who are here to protect us. And I thought that was interesting, because he was basically just born different. You know, he wasn't zapped by gamma rays or anything like that. His parents weren't shot in front of him. He just was different from the start, as was Elijah. They were just born that way and then became what they were. So, I mean, I appreciated that. There's certain simplicity there as well, which I appreciate. So before we get to our final segment where we talk about the rare antiquities, do you think this would work? Like, let's say this never came out in 2000. They make this exact movie today in the midst of, you know, Marvel movie madness. How do you think it's received?
The problem now is today that these type of movies with the surprise twist, as we talked about, is so commonplace.
Yeah.
That I don't think it would be effectively received as it was back in 2000. However, if that wasn't a trope, because now it's a trope.
Yeah.
If that trope does not exist, I think it would be very effective and very fresh, because I'm tired of seeing overpowered superheroes just killing each other and beating dudes up and having these massively epic battles. This is a personal story, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's small in scope and very different, as I said. So that's where I appreciate this movie on that level the most. And that's why I kind of, it's hard to harken back. That's why I like Superman, the movie, in a sense. It's still very grandiose, that movie, but it still has a lot of it's on a personal, smaller scale level with respect to Superman and his relationship with Lois Lane. And I think that's a special aspect of that movie. And it's not over the top. It's not too many things happening. Mm-hmm. It's him, and it's just her, and it has Lex Luthor and missiles, and that's it. And he saves the day, and it's awesome. And you don't get that in movies today. No. You have to have, the superhero has to have, 5 billion problems happening at the same time, next to impossible odds, and so many distractions and other, 20 different villains popping their heads in the lead up to the sequel. Even though Superman did have that lead up to the sequel, Zod, so bad choice of maybe not the best example, but that's why I like this movie.
Yeah, it's
even smaller scale than that, and I like that.
Yeah, it's a personal story. It's Superman, the movie, is a very personal story, not just with Lois, his relationship with Lois Lane, but also his relationship with a lot of the movies is him discovering his heritage, right? And that is, I completely agree with you. That's part of what makes that movie great. It's part of what works well for this movie. So last bit before we get into the last segment is, we're not, unless you want to go into it, because who knows, people are going to listen to this. So I don't want to do any spoilers. This is, M Night Shyamalan has been quoted as saying this is his favorite of his movies, and he's always wanted to do a sequel or a follow-up, and now it looks like it may actually happen.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, but I don't want to spoil anything for you.
I don't know nothing, so don't spoil it.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say this. If you want to go ahead and go watch the movie Split, you should probably go and do so.
Yeah, I haven't seen Split, and I want to.
Okay, so watch that and avoid spoilers.
I will, but for God's sake, it better not be fucking shared universe bullshit.
Just go watch it, and then we can talk about it afterwards. I haven't seen it, but I know what happens. So,
that's gotta suck for you.
Well, I found out because I wasn't going to watch it, right? So I was just reading an article and whatever, and then they spoiled it for me, and I was like, well, shit, I wish I hadn't known that.
But why wouldn't you want to watch it?
Just like M. Night Shyamalan's over the years, it's just like, I'm not really interested in stuff anymore.
No, fair enough, and we talked about that, right? So.
But I read the thing, and I was just like, well, I wasn't going to watch it before, before. So if I hadn't known the spoiler, I would never have wanted to watch it. But now that I know the spoiler, I wish I hadn't known it and wanted to watch it before. Anyway.
This particular one has really good word of mouth. So
it does. Yeah.
I'm going to see it in the theater. I'll wait till it hits Netflix and then I'll catch it.
It has been fairly well reviewed. Okay, so let's jump to the final segment of the show. Harry, would you recommend Unbreakable, and is it a rare antiquity?
Oh, 100% would recommend this. It's one of M. Night's best, if not his best movie. It's also a great thriller, a great superhero movie. Talked about its strengths and some of its weaknesses, but the weaknesses don't detract from its positivity. It's a high recommend. As for a rare antiquity, I struggled with that question. I will give it a bare pass for a rare antiquity because it is fresh with respect to the superhero genre, but not fresh with respect to the mystery thriller and surprise twist end. Because if this was The Sixth Sense, then I would say that probably could be a rare antiquity. He did that first, and he's been replicating that formula ever since, and including this movie's follow-up. So, but because it's fresh for the genre, because he put in, you could either classify it, as we talked about, as a superhero movie. I still feel there's enough here and enough difference to still classify it as something that's special.
I think I largely agree. Recommendation, 100%. This is a really good watch. Well filmed, well acted, well directed, well written. I mean, it's a very, very tight movie. And in this era of, the summer blockbusters, which are just totally sloppy in comparison to this, every scene works, every line works. Every performance, for the most part, works really, really well. So, yeah, watch this movie. It's excellent. Is this a rare antiquity for me? I'm less on the fence about it than you. I absolutely think this is a rare antiquity simply because of how tight it is and because of the different take on the superhero genre. If this was made today, it would probably be even more fresh, just considering what we've seen. And this came before the madness that we got to sit through now. So, yeah, I think it's tight, it's entertaining, good performances. Just a really well-made movie all around and original material. So that makes it a rare antiquity for me. So that wraps up Unbreakable for us. Harry, thanks for doing that. What do you have in store for us next time?
Forgot me, have you? Next time, we will look at Frank Oz's 1991 comedy, What About Bob?
Oh, my. What About Bob? Yep. Okay. Is Bill Murray in that movie?
That's Bill Murray and Richard
That's
Dreyfuss.
What I thought.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I've never seen that.
Are you serious?
I don't think so. I don't think I can see. I think I can see the poster in my mind. So maybe I have seen it, but I don't. Well, I'll report back to you when we do the show.
Yeah, no, I have not seen this one in a long time. It was on my list of ones to look at and go back and revisit. So I've been itching to watch this one ever since I thought about it. So and put it on the list. So can't wait.
Yeah, no, that'd be good to get a comedy in there. We need some lightness for sure. So that'll be awesome.
All right,
man. Well, thanks for doing the show, and we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.
All right.
You better not be jacking off to the Japanese comics, I swear to God.